I don't think God wants people to be poor. And today in the world, America especially, is this gap between the rich and everybody else. And I know the game of the rich. You know, my rich dad taught me, you know it because you're the banker. The game the bankers and the rich play is different than what they teach you in school. And that's the story of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You know, my poor dad, PhD, stands for poor, helpless, and desperate. They don't know anything about money. And they're teaching our kids. And my rich dad was an entrepreneur who never finished school. I grew up in Hawaii. So all of the pieces of the puzzle, and when Fuller scolded me back in '83, the pieces of the puzzle and my life started to come together. And I understood what he was saying then. You know, he says, well, maybe we should stop ripping people off. You know, it might be a good thing. And, you know, a question I ask all over the world, what does school teach you about money? And the answer is nothing. And that's not a mistake. That's not an accident. I knew that. Most people know that. But the way to keep the poor and middle class working hard is never teach them what the rich know. So if you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which came out in 1997, it's what the rich teach their kids about money, the poor and middle class do not. And so, and I had already retired. I made enough money at 47, so I didn't have to work again for the rest of my life. And I said, now what do I do with the rest of my life? And so that's when I came out with Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the cash flow game, because poverty hurts. I mean, I don't like it. And I don't like that our academic system's so corrupt. You know, we know the banking system's corrupt. We know politics is corrupt, but academics is just as corrupt. So I just said, well, if exactly as Fuller said, what does God want done, not what I want done. Martin Luther King said it another way. He says, King says, I just want to do God's will. So that's what I cover in Faith. What does God want done?
And the fact that it's corrupted our academic institution, that kind of makes you mad, doesn't it? I mean, one thing if it's the banking and the politics, but this is where we send our children and we trust them to do the right things for them. And yet they're being not taught something so fundamental. Like you asked your dad when you were a kid, Dad, you asked your teacher, when are you going to teach us about money? And it was just
Never.
Never.
And they'll never will. So anyway, so that's why I keep going. You know, that's why I appreciate, you know, your support of my work and time and all this, because they don't want what we know out there. So that's why fake is fake money, fake teachers, fake assets. And the asset part, you know where that comes from. It's the City of London, Wall Street, the derivatives markets. But our school system will never tell us that, because they're part of the process. Fake money, fake teachers, fake assets. They're all one scenario. And that's what Bucky Fuller's kind of inspired me to do back in '83. He says, you know something. What do you know? Share it. What does God want done? Or as Martin Luther King says, I just want to do God's will. So what drives me on in my health is not the best, but the will, you know, the spirit keeps me on. Go back to what is financial education? It's not get a job, work hard, save money, and invest in a well-diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and ETFs. That's not it. You know, money is, the financial industry is two things, debt and taxes. Debt and taxes. And that's where fake starts. 1971, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, and the US dollar became debt. And we still tell kids to go to school, get a job, work hard, save money, and get out of debt. Now, who tells them to do that? That's the most ridiculous thing there is.
The book starts and it says, lie number 1, saving money will make you rich.
Yeah, it never will. You know that.
All taught that as kids.
Yeah, because they can print it. Why would you save it and why would you work for it if they can print it faster than you can work for it? And number 2 is they keep dropping the interest rates on it. You know, Japan still has zero interest rate policy. And the Japanese are the biggest savers in the world. And I'm Japanese. I'm fourth generation. They're not too bright.
Right.
Why do you keep saving when they're printing it? You know, and when I'm in Japan, that's what I mean by fear. They're so afraid because the Japanese, they're a good culture, but they do as they're told.
Right. It's very conformist.
Very conformist. Very conformist. So they just do as they're told.
Okay.
They're afraid they might make a mistake. They're good little students in school. Go to school, get a job, don't make mistakes.
Right. And that's what school conditions people to do,
Correct.
is to not get mistakes.
Correct.
Get an A on the test, show up and do your homework. But to be a great entrepreneur and investor and a great rich person, you have to engineer mistakes into your life.